Hey guys, Brandon here. Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to discuss the homelessness crisis in California and more significantly, offer my solution to this crisis. Before I get into it though, I've got 3 requests of you. First, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, welcome. My name is Brandon Jones, and I'm running to be California's next governor in the upcoming 2026 gubernatorial election. My family and I live in the San Diego area, and I'm also the founding member of the fast-growing grassroots movement known as Restore California. To learn more about my campaign and the movement and how you can join the movement, visit restoreca.org. Okay, let's get into it. Homelessness in California, indeed a growing humanitarian crisis. I want to start by sharing a bit about my personal experience working on the front lines of this crisis. My company, Calvary Properties, spent about 6 years purchasing and rehabilitating nearly 100 single-family and multifamily dwellings, many of which were used to house the homeless. But what I learned was sobering. Here's a heartbreaking truth. Although homeless individuals and families were allowed to move into these properties rent-free, they were given allowances for food and clothing. It was made as easy as possible for them to get off the streets into permanent housing to rebuild their lives. Here's what I learned. Within 6 months, nearly 90% of these people were right back out on the streets, returning to a life of homelessness, crime, drug addiction, prostitution, and other things that come along with being homeless. In fact, one day I was talking to a social worker, and she shared this insight. She said, families once provided stability, but now entire families are caught in cycles of addiction, leaving people with nowhere to turn but the government. And I bring this up to make one very clear point. Often when you hear other politicians or candidates running for office, and when they present a solution to homelessness, they usually only present 2 issues: mental health and drug addiction. But those issues are mere symptoms of a deeper rooted issue that drives the homelessness epidemic, and that is a breakdown of the family. So the solution to homelessness must include fundamentally a rebuilding of the family unit. Very important, and that's part of my plan, certainly. But let's touch on some of these other issues. Let's start with mental health, the mental health crisis. 25% of the homeless population in California suffers from some kind of serious mental illness, compared to only 6% of the general population. So mental health is a big issue. Furthermore, there is a substance abuse issue. Research indicates that 30% of chronically homeless individuals struggle with some form of addiction, which makes stable housing and employment that much more difficult for them. Beyond mental health and drug addiction, there's also economic disparity that drives homelessness. Average rent, as one example, average rent in Los Angeles exceeds $2,500 per month. This far outpaces minimum wage earnings. California also has an affordable housing shortage, which further exacerbates the issue. In fact, California is short 1.2 million rental homes, which pushes more families into homelessness. On top of all that, we have policies in place that actually incentivize and enable people to be homeless. There are some government programs that actually discourage self-sufficiency, with studies showing that 21% of homeless individuals actually turn down work in favor of government assistance. So California's failing policies When you break it down monetarily, here's what it looks like. There's been $20 billion spent on homelessness programs. And that's coming out of the pockets of people just like you and me, the everyday California taxpayer. 20 plus billion spent on homelessness programs, yet the crisis only gets worse. And here's what that crisis looks like. As of 2023, 171,000 people homeless in California. That is 1/3 of the nation's homeless population. 1/3 of the nation's homeless population lives in California. Actually, more recent studies indicate that it's about 180,000 people and growing at this point. There are two major initiatives that have been rolled out in the last few years. Both have failed and both have been very costly. The first one is what's called Project Room Key. About $1 billion was spent on this initiative, with 40% of people returning to homelessness within months due to a lack of transitional pathways. Another failed policy is called No Place Like Home, which was launched in 2016. $2 billion of taxpayer money was redirected from mental health programs for housing projects, but of course, bureaucratic delays left much of the money unspent. What about permanent housing costs? Check this out. The average cost to renovate a single unit like within a hotel or a motel, a single room to be rehabilitated, the government is spending on average of $500,000 per unit. That's way too much. That is a waste of taxpayer money, and it's not helping anyone. $500,000, $500,000 per unit. That is financially unsustainable at scale. There's other policies in place that just allow people to be homeless, and policies that prevent law enforcement and other social services and nonprofit organizations from doing their job to help end homelessness in California. One such law is what's known as Jones versus the City of Los Angeles. Enacted in 2006, this law prohibits any kind of enforcement of anti-camping laws without available shelter. This has only led to further widespread tent encampments. There's other policies such as Proposition 57 and AB 109. These policies were rolled out as a way to reduce prison populations by allowing more people to come out of prisons into society. However, without adequate re-entry support, many of those people just end up being homeless. And so that further increases homelessness among former inmates. So those are just a few of the issues that characterize the homelessness crisis in California. So what's my plan? What's the Restore California vision to transform the homelessness crisis, to solve it once and for all? I call it the Homeward Bound Plan. And it's a real solution. It's a practical solution. And here's what it looks like. First, we need to engage the community. We need to mobilize volunteers. We need to launch a public awareness campaign to encourage community involvement. My vision for California is less about government pretending to be the solution for everything and more about uniting the people of California to bring about real change, working alongside government. We need to recruit and train volunteers for trauma-informed care, crisis management, and mentorship programs. We need to set up temporary shelters and integrated services. Here's how we're going to do that. We're going to repurpose vacant properties, warehouses, industrial buildings. We're going to rent them from business owners, which will further improve the economy by giving much needed revenue to these real estate owners. And we're going to repurpose them into shelters with healthcare, addiction treatment, and job training on site. But these are temporary shelters. We're going to implement mandatory mental health and addiction care for those in need. Guys, having people roam the streets who are battling with significant psychological issues like schizophrenia is not good for them, and it's not good for anyone else. We must compassionately require that people under such circumstances get the medical help they need. Furthermore, we're going to implement transitional housing and economic dependence. We're going to do this by developing transitional housing with accountability-based programs. These individuals are going to pay rent, so there's going to be rent contributions, and these environments are going to be drug-free environments. Now, going back to what I mentioned about being on the front lines of the homelessness crisis and how my company rehabilitated nearly 100 properties and worked directly with the homeless, why did so many of them end up back out on the streets within a few months? It's because you must change their environment. Just giving them a roof over their head and just giving them food without changing their environment does not give them the support and the accountability they need to have real lasting change in their lives. Okay, very important. We must change their environment. We must get them into transitional housing that offers the support and accountability that they need for long-term success. But this transitional housing is not going to be funded by taxpayer funds. We're going to work with private partnerships to expand housing projects while reducing costs. Organizations like Oxford House and other nonprofit organizations that work with real estate developers and other landlords to provide these kinds of transitional housing, but these homeless individuals will be required to be gainfully employed, to pay rent, and to be in an environment, again, that offers them support and accountability so they can truly rebuild their lives. We're also going to strengthen law enforcement and accountability. We're going to equip law enforcement with the resources and the authority and the ability to clear illegal encampments. And we're going to overturn restrictive laws that actually prevent enforcement of public safety measures, like Jones versus the city of Los Angeles, like I mentioned a few minutes ago. We're going to cut the cost of housing solutions. And here's how we're going to do that. We're going to enforce cost caps on government-funded housing projects to prevent wasteful spending. We're going to encourage, as I mentioned before, organizations like Oxford House and that kind of model for transitional housing. We're going to encourage more of that where residents contribute to the housing costs. We're not going to put all the burden on the taxpayer. Now, how does this plan, though, fix the system? How is it better than what exists currently? Well, one, it addresses both temporary relief and long-term recovery. Project Room Key and No Place Like Home, several major policies that are in place to help curb homelessness, it's only made the issue worse because they're half-baked plans that at best only address temporary relief. And it is a drain on taxpayers, and it's ineffective in both the short term and the long term. So we're going to address both temporary relief and long-term recovery. We're also going to include mental health and addiction treatment as core pillars. We're going to mobilize the community and get the community more involved rather than relying solely on government, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. We're going to focus on job training and self-sufficiency to break the cycle of dependency. We're also going to reduce taxpayer burden by leveraging private investment and cost-efficient models. So what this plan really is about is a call to action. It's a call to action, and Californians must demand accountability and action, not just funding, not just more taxpayer money that gets thrown at these half-baked, ineffective quasi-solutions. So in closing, I encourage you to join the Restore California movement, to fight for change such as this, not just for homelessness, but for many of the other issues that plague our great state. So join Restore California movement to implement real, lasting solutions. And you can do that by visiting restoreca.org. Together, I truly believe we can rebuild lives and communities by coming together and uniting as the people of this great state. I thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.